The golden sun once set over a land of unparalleled beauty, a place where the Kaveri river whispered secrets to the swaying palms and the air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and sacred ash. This was Thirukkalikkamur, a realm governed not just by kings but by the rhythmic chanting of the Vedas and the clanging of temple bells. In the heart of this village lived a soul whose devotion was as vast as the ocean, Annappa Nayinar. To him, the stone lingam of Sri Sundareswarar was not a mere idol. It was the living, breathing master of the universe, and Annappa considered himself the humblest of servants. His life was a symphony of service, specifically the sacred act of Annadanam. He believed that the fire of hunger in a devotee's stomach was a direct cry from Lord Shiva himself. Every single day, without fail, the doors of his modest home remained wide open. Whether it was a wandering mendicant in tattered robes or a scholar from a distant land, no one left his threshold without a full stomach and a blessed heart. He spent his days in the fields and his evenings in the service of the hungry, seeing the face of the divine in every weary traveler who sat to dine. However, the universe often tests the strongest pillars of faith. A shadow began to creep across the Chola kingdom. The monsoon, which usually arrived with the thunderous roar of 1,000 lions, simply vanished. The clouds turned into wisps of smoke, and the scorching sun began to drink the lifeblood of the earth. The lush green carpets of the paddy fields turned into a brittle, cracked mosaic of grey dust. The Kaveri, the mother who fed millions, shrank into a narrow, muddy vein. Panic gripped the hearts of the people, but Annappa's resolve remained unshaken. As his own granaries began to show their wooden floors, he did not stop his service. When the rice ran out, he sold his fertile lands to buy grain from distant provinces. When those funds evaporated, he looked at the gold ornaments that adorned his devoted wife, jewels passed down through generations. With a heavy heart but a clear soul, he sold them too, for he could not bear the thought of a single Sivanadiyar sleeping in hunger while he still had possessions to give. Eventually, the walls of his house were all that remained. He sold the very roof over his head, moving into a small hut, yet the large cauldrons of rice continued to steam every afternoon. The ultimate trial arrived on a Tuesday when the very last handful of grain was boiled and served. Annappa stood in his empty kitchen, the silence echoing louder than any storm. He walked to the temple of Sri Sundareswarar, his legs weak from his own fasting, for he always ate last, and lately there had been nothing left for the host. He stood before the sanctum sanctorum, the flickering oil lamps casting long dancing shadows on the walls. "My lord, my Sundareswarar," he whispered, his voice cracking like the parched earth outside. "You gave me the hands to serve, the heart to love, and the means to feed. Now, you have taken the means away. I do not mourn my wealth or my home, but I cannot endure the sight of your children starving at my gate. If I cannot be the vessel for your grace, then let this breath be my last." He prostrated himself on the cold stone floor, weeping until his eyes grew heavy and a deep, supernatural sleep took hold of him right there in the temple corridors. While Annappa lay in a trance of sorrow, the cosmic machinery of Kailash began to stir. Lord Shiva, who is easily moved by the tears of his devotees, looked down upon the parched fields of Thirukkalikkamur. That night, the local Chola governor had a vision that shook his very soul. In his dream, a figure of blinding white light, adorned with a crescent moon and serpents of living flame, stood before him. The voice of the Lord vibrated through his bones, commanding him to wake and witness a miracle in the fields of a man who had given everything. Simultaneously, a celestial mist began to descend upon Annappa's barren, dusty patch of land. It was as if the stars themselves were melting onto the soil. The dry earth began to drink this divine nectar, and from the cracks in the ground, tiny shoots of emerald green began to pierce through the dust. But as they grew under the moonlight, they did not stay green. They began to shimmer with a metallic radiance that defied the laws of nature. At the break of dawn, as the first light of the sun touched the horizon, the village was awakened by a cry of pure disbelief. People rushed toward the outskirts, toward the land that had been a graveyard of crops just hours before. There, swaying in the morning breeze, was a sea of rice stalks unlike anything ever seen in the history of mankind. The stalks were heavy, drooping under the weight of grains that were not white or brown, but a brilliant polished yellow. Each grain was a bead of solid 24-karat gold. He's at the sight of this Pon Vilain the Bhumi, the land where gold grew. Annappa was woken by the commotion and ran to his field. He did not cheer. He fell to the earth and clutched the mud, realizing that the Lord had not only heard his prayer but had transformed his poverty into a treasury for the world. He did not keep a single grain for himself. He declared that this golden harvest belonged to the temple and to the eternal kitchen of the Lord. From that day, the village was renamed Annappan Pettai, the place of the one who provides food. The legend of the golden rice became a beacon of hope, proving that when a human offers their soul, the divine responds with the infinite. To this day, the air at Thirukkalikkamur carries the weight of that miracle, reminding every pilgrim that no act of kindness is ever lost in the eyes of Sri Sundareswarar. From the land of timeless wisdom to the world, this is Deva Bhumi Worldwide. Subscribe and share this journey with someone who believes in the divine.